the urgent search for a young woman gone missing, the Tennessee Sheriff's Association has added $5,000 to the reward fund for Holly Bobo, the 20-year-old nursing student who reportedly was abducted from her home a week ago today.
Imagine waking up to a silence that's shocking, a silence that makes you feel something is terribly wrong. For the Bobo family, that silence was the start of a nightmare that would stay with them for years. It was April 13th, 2011, and 20-year-old Holly Bobo had suddenly disappeared, leaving behind only clues of a struggle and many unanswered questions. As detectives searched for answers, they found themselves stuck in a mess of lies and false leads. Every new clue seemed to lead nowhere, every tip a disappointment. But the truth, when it finally came out, was shocking, a story of betrayal, secrets, and a surprising twist that would stun the community. What happened to Holly Bobo, and who was behind the terrible events that changed her life? Let's jump right into it. At the time of her disappearance, Holly Bobo was a nursing student at the University of Tennessee at Martin's Parsons Center in Parsons, Tennessee. She was a diligent student, committed to becoming a nurse to make a difference in others' lives. Holly lived with her parents, Karen and Kirby Bobo, and her younger brother, Clint, in the small rural town of Darden in West Tennessee.
Holly and I have just pretty much always been extremely close, and to the point that, I mean, when she was a teenager, she would just kind of look at me sometimes and say that's scary, because we could finish each other's sentences or kind of look at each other and know.
Friends and family described Holly as a kind, gentle, and compassionate person. Despite her reserved demeanor, she was loved for her warm personality and eagerness to lend a helping hand. Holly shared a particularly close bond with her brother Clint and was also related to country singer Whitney Duncan, who later honored Holly's memory with the song Better Place in 2017.
She's beautiful, kind of shy, quiet girl until you get to know her, and then she's just funny and sweet, and she's amazing.
Holly's life revolved around her family, academic ambitions, and future aspirations in nursing. Tragically, these dreams were cut short when she vanished in April 2011. On the morning of April 13th, 2011, Holly started her day early, waking at 4:30 a.m. to prepare for an upcoming exam.
And I kissed her goodbye and told her I loved her, just like every other.
By 7:30 a.m., she spoke briefly on the phone with her boyfriend, Drew Scott, who was turkey hunting nearby on her grandmother's property. Holly's parents had already left for work, and her brother Clint was still asleep in the family home. This phone call with Drew would be her last confirmed communication. Shortly afterward, at 7:42 a.m., Holly made one final outgoing call. From that point on, her phone went silent, and she did not answer subsequent calls or texts. Around the same time, a neighbor heard a distressing scream coming from the direction of the Bobo residence. Alarmed, they contacted their mother, who then reached out to Karen Bobo at work. Meanwhile, Clint woke up to the sound of the family dogs barking and went outside to investigate. He saw what he initially believed was Holly and Drew standing in the driveway, engaged in a heated discussion. Holly appeared visibly upset. Although Clint could hear snippets of their conversation, he could only make out the words, "No, why?" and assumed they might be arguing about their relationship. However, Clint soon realized something was wrong. The man with Holly, dressed in camouflage, was significantly larger than Drew, causing Clint to feel uneasy. He watched as the man led Holly toward the woods near their home. Confused, Clint called his mother to describe what he had seen. Karen immediately urged Clint to call 911, fearing for Holly's safety.
911, what's your emergency?
Yes, I need to Cutter County 911.
This is him. What's wrong, dear?
Listen, 681 Swan Johnson Road. Somebody has my daughter. Somebody in full camouflage got Holly. Grabbed her and took her to the woods. Please, get everybody out.
Clint, however, still believed the man might be Drew and hesitated. During a follow-up call, Karen insisted, "Clint, that's not Drew. Get a gun and do something." Clint, unsure of the situation, replied, "You want me to shoot Drew?" Moments later, Clint noticed bloodstains near the garage, confirming his worst fears. In a panic, he called 911. Law enforcement arrived within minutes, and the investigation began in earnest.
And then I ran over to the office and I called 911. I don't remember exactly what I said, but I remember they said it was Henderson County. We live in Decatur County, so I hung up. I think I fell on the floor at that point.
Tracking Holly's phone, investigators found that it had initially pinged cell towers north of the home near Interstate 40. The phone remained stationary for 20 to 30 minutes before moving south along a different path. The final signal was traced to a remote area where Holly's phone and SIM card were later discovered. This marked the beginning of a lengthy and agonizing search that spanned years. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, TBI, quickly assumed control of the case. From the outset, it was apparent that Holly's abduction was not a random act, but a calculated one. Holly had no known enemies, and her reputation as a kind, hard-working individual made her an unlikely target. Investigators initially speculated that the perpetrator might have been someone who knew Holly or had knowledge of her daily routines. In the early days of the investigation, the TBI interviewed Holly's friends, family, and acquaintances, searching for any clues that could lead to a suspect. Clint's account of seeing Holly with a man in camouflage shortly before she disappeared provided a critical starting point.
We feel that she knew that she was in fear of her life, so she was complying with his command.
However, the confusion and miscommunication during those initial moments added layers of complexity to the case. Despite Holly's seemingly peaceful life as a nursing student, detectives faced significant challenges in identifying credible leads. There were no apparent conflicts or issues in Holly's personal life that would explain why someone might target her.
Holly, I love you so much. Please try to get home to us. And if anybody knows anything about her, please help us find her.
Investigators explored the possibility of a personal vendetta, but found no evidence to support this theory. The lack of immediate answers deepened the mystery surrounding Holly's disappearance. As the search intensified, various theories emerged. One notable lead involved Terry Britt, a local registered sex offender whose description closely matched Clint's account of the man seen with Holly. Authorities monitored Britt's activities, wiretapped his phone, and searched his property.
I know there was tons of people here trying to help. I know lots of people were called in. I don't know what else could have been done.
Despite these efforts, no concrete evidence linked him to Holly's abduction, and he was ultimately cleared as a suspect. The prolonged investigation and lack of resolution took a heavy emotional toll on Holly's family, especially her parents and Clint. Throughout the ordeal, they remained vocal advocates for Holly, raising awareness about abductions and supporting efforts to bring missing persons home. Their unwavering determination became a symbol of hope for others enduring similar tragedies. The investigation into Holly Bobo's disappearance continued for months, with very few developments. Over time, the case appeared to lose momentum and public interest began to fade. However, in 2014, 3 years after Holly vanished, the investigation took a major turn. In March 2014, authorities arrested 29-year-old Zachary Adams from Decatur County.
Now, 29-year-old Zachary Adams has been arrested in the case. He lived about 15 miles from Bobo's home in West Tennessee. The TBI won't yet say what new evidence came to light in the case, as the investigation is ongoing.
He was charged with crimes related to Holly's abduction and murder. Adams had been on investigators' radar for some time, but it wasn't until they received a critical tip that he became their main focus. In this tip, claimed Adams had made statements implicating himself in Holly's kidnapping. Around the same time, DNA evidence connected Adams to the area where Holly's remains would eventually be found. Adams had a history of drug use and violent behavior, making him a strong suspect. Although investigators had questioned him earlier in the case, they lacked the evidence to link him directly to Holly's disappearance until this point. His arrest marked the first significant progress in the case, and detectives began piecing together his involvement. As they investigated Adams further, two other men, Jason Autry and Shane Austin, were also implicated. Autry, a friend of Adams, and Austin, another acquaintance, were believed to have helped in the kidnapping, captivity, and eventual disposal of Holly's body. Investigators uncovered phone records showing that Austin had contacted Adams on the day Holly went missing. These records placed him in the same area where Holly's remains were later discovered. The renewed focus on these suspects brought hope to law enforcement and Holly's family after years of unanswered questions. Although Holly's body had not yet been recovered, the arrests of Adams and the others offered new leads in the case. Investigators pushed harder for evidence, determined to uncover the truth. The arrests also brought some relief to Holly's family, who had endured years of pain and uncertainty. They now had hope that justice might finally be served. When Holly's remains were eventually found, they confirmed many of the fears investigators and her family had held for years. Holly's loved ones could finally start to understand what had happened to her.
TBI has been able to confirm through the findings of an odontologist that the remains are of Holly Bobo.
Among the main suspects were Zach Adams, his brother Dylan Adams, and their friend Jason Autry. Zach Adams, Dylan Adams, and Jason Autry faced charges of especially aggravated kidnapping, first-degree murder, and rape. Dylan Adams' arrest on unrelated weapons charges led to new revelations. During questioning, Dylan claimed he saw Holly alive at Zach's home shortly after her abduction. Dylan also alleged that Zach had confessed to raping Holly and recording the act, though no such video was ever found. Later, Dylan retracted his confession, claiming it was coerced and didn't align with the evidence. Despite this, Zach Adams, Jason Autry, and Shane Austin were all arrested. In 2017, Autry agreed to testify against Zach Adams in exchange for a lighter sentence. Shane Austin's involvement became critical as well. Investigators offered him immunity in exchange for information about the location of Holly's body. Phone records showed Austin had been in contact with Zach Adams on the day of Holly's disappearance. Authorities believed Austin played a role in disposing of her remains. However, after failing to provide helpful information, his immunity deal was revoked. In 2015, Austin was found dead in a Florida hotel room, having taken his own life.
I just want to say to the Bobos that I'm sorry for the loss. That all got shattered because of these men.
His lawyer claimed the investigation had driven Austin to despair, insisting Austin had cooperated and was innocent of any wrongdoing. Other suspects, including Jeffrey and Mark Piercy, were briefly considered. In July 2014, they were arrested on charges of accessory after the fact and tampering with evidence. These charges were based on allegations from Jeffrey's ex-roommate, Sandra King, who claimed they had filmed an assault on Holly. However, after examining over 20 phones, investigators found no evidence to support these claims. The charges were dropped, and their involvement was not mentioned during Zach Adams's trial. Zach Adams's trial for Holly's kidnapping, rape, and murder began in September 2017. The prosecution relied heavily on circumstantial evidence, as no direct physical evidence tied Adams to the crime. Jason Autry's testimony was a key part of their case. Autry said he wasn't involved in Holly's abduction, but admitted to helping Adams and Austin dispose of her body.
The first thing I noticed was a burn barrel that was burning. The second thing was Dylan was standing in the doorway with his shirt off. Shane was walking around saying, "Y'all need to hurry up and get the goddamn hell out of here," and holstered on his side was a fire.
He claimed that when they unloaded Holly's body by the Tennessee River, they realized she was still alive. Adams then shot her in the head, according to Autry. Other evidence included Holly's personal belongings, which were found near Austin's home, and testimony from witnesses who said Adams had made incriminating statements. A gun connected to the case was also found, though it couldn't be linked to the crime through ballistics. Despite the lack of direct evidence, the jury found Zach Adams guilty on all charges, including first-degree murder, especially aggravated kidnapping and aggravated rape.
He said the real reason that we were there was to show Clint how to manufacture meth. He said we got there early. She come outside screaming and raising hell, and we took her.
He was sentenced to life in prison without parole, along with 2 consecutive 25-year sentences. In January 2018, Dylan Adams pleaded guilty to facilitation of first-degree murder and especially aggravated kidnapping. He entered an Alford plea, acknowledging the prosecution's evidence without admitting guilt. Dylan received a 35-year sentence. His family argued that his confession had been coerced.
Finally, after 6.5 years, I do feel that we got justice for our daughter. We have lived a hard life and walked on an extremely unimaginable hard road for 6.5 years.
Pointing to his cognitive impairments and claiming investigators had manipulated him during questioning. Although Dylan, Autry, and Austin had all confessed at some point, they later denied their involvement and said their statements had been forced. The defense team for Zach Adams maintained his innocence, arguing that Jason Autry fabricated his story to secure a reduced sentence. They highlighted inconsistencies in Autry's testimony and pointed to discrepancies in cell phone records. Holly Bobo's abduction and murder devastated her family and the close-knit community in rural Tennessee.
Yes, I've wished a million times that things would have gone totally different, but we can't change that.
The case sparked conversations about the role of law enforcement, the reliability of forensic evidence, and the treatment of suspects in high-profile investigations. While the verdict brought some sense of closure, it also left lingering questions about the legal system, the use of plea deals, and the search for truth in such complex cases.